Hi friends. Today I thought we'd dive into, what is the name of this palette? Bronze Borealis, compared to Voyeuristic Vixen and Eternal Eden. But if it's your first time here, hi, I'm Alicia. Thank you so much for clicking on my video. And if you are returning, well, thank you for visiting me again. Kinky Sweat stands for my kinky hair and sweat life. I am a fitness professional who loves things, all movement and beauty. If you want to check out what I do in between the makeups, you can head over to my Instagram. If you want to check out my virtual class schedule, take class with me, maybe do a little flexi flex, well, please sign up for my newsletter down below. We're fresh face, as I figured we'll go into the eyeshadow first. If you want to see a comparison between Deep Space Divinity from this year's holiday collection and Interstellar Icon last year's, I'll post that video up above in the card and down below in a link if I remember this time. I apologize for the last time I didn't. And I just wanted to compare these different quads because they do look similar, and within the entire McGrath Labs mothership portfolio, we definitely have the rose shades. So here is Bronze Borealis. This is what released in this year's holiday collection. I went over the smaller pans too in the last video, so if you want to see me rant about that, please go ahead. And you could just click on the timestamp. It says my thoughts on the smaller pans. Okay, then we have Voyeuristic Vixen that released in the Divine Blush collection. Yeah, so this was released a couple of months back, and if you look at these, you're like, you know what, these are really similar. Maybe I don't need Bronze Borealis and I could just stick to Voyeuristic Vixen. But then I remembered that we had Eternal Eden, the quad that released with like a side Divine Rose collection. I think this was with Divine Rose 2, if I'm not mistaken. I totally forgot. But here it is up against Bronze Borealis. This is significantly more pink and leaning a little more like a cooler mauve versus the After Dusk or Mink Dusk shade, I believe it's called. That's in Bronze Borealis. I thought, why don't we get all the swatches on the arm first, then we'll go into the demos and we'll talk about it afterwards. Does that sound like a plan? Excellent. First, starting with Bronze Borealis, we have Lunar Legend, which is a champagne metallic. Sienna Rose, a rose metallic. Mink Dusk, which is a mauve matte shade, and Cyber Bronze, a warm bronze metallic. From Voyeuristic Vixen, we have Moonlight Liaison, which is a cooler champagne shade. Rose Fire Nectar, a beautiful topper duochrome shade. After Dusk, a more red tone plum matte, and lastly Twilight Bronze, a cooler bronze metallic. And from Eternal Eden, first we have Pink Mystique, a duochrome pink shade. Temptation, a creamy matte, I think I would say this is like a medium pink. Earthly Delight, another creamy matte mauve. And Forbidden Fruit, we have like a plum metallic shade. All three palettes, I do think this is probably the most approachable, and the only reason I say that is that Rose Fire Nectar, definitely a topper shade that is going to provide dazzle and shine. It is flakier. It's not smooth like past metallic formulas, so if you're not crazy about that texture, then you'll stay away from Voyeuristic Vixen. I think it's absolutely gorgeous because it allows the opportunity to boost the metallic shades in Voyeuristic Vixen in a way that you can't just with the regular metallic formula. And with Eternal Eden, this is, I think, just more pink overall. You got Pink Mystique and this medium vibrant creamy matte pink. And also this palette with, I believe, Risque Rose has like a newer matte formula that Pat has not yet done in her bigger mothership palettes. It has more of like a moussey texture versus the slightly drier texture in her traditional matte formula. I rather love the newer creamy, like creamy-ish matte formula. Is not quite the same as Natasha's. Natasha's cream to matte formula has a little more of a waxy feel to it versus Pat's feeling a little more moussey in consistency to that powdery texture when you start blending. I adore. If she can release more matte formulas like that, not only in her quads, but as well as in her bigger motherships. I also wanted to mention that I have another shade. And forgive me for not remembering the fan member who brought up this shade from the 6-pan mini. Let's see here. This shade is called, let me get the back of the card, Les Sin. Les Sin kind of reminds me of Sienna Rose. Let me put it right here. It looks like Les Sin has a little more pink in there, and Sienna Rose is more of like an actual rose. For a better comparison, I'll take this on the back of my hand. Again, that is Les Sin. Let me go with Sienna Rose. I'm sorry that my hands are so bony. It's from the handstands, you know, so all the squeezing. And just to quickly pair the mattes again, I'll put them against each other on this forearm. So again, we're looking at Mink Dusk, After Dusk. Oh, what a crooked swatch, Alicia. It's because I'm doing it with my left hand, I'm sorry. And Earthly Delight. Earthly Delight is lighter, but they're very similar to each other, whereas After Dusk has a little more of a reddish tone to it. But what I would like to do is just to pair Bronze Borealis first with Voyeuristic Vixen, then try Eternal Eden. How about that? But first, why don't you come in a little closer? That's enough. And I must remember to use intensifies for this round because I failed to do so for the last Luxe comparison video I did, and it could have done really well with Hypnotique from Interstellar Icon. But we'll use it with Rose Fire Nectar, as I think it will prove very helpful to provide more adherence for that flakier texture, especially if you choose to apply it solo or on top of a metallic shade. Eyes are prepped, and I thought, why don't we start with Mink Dusk here from Bronze Borealis. Pretty much seen this shade before. I do love the hue. Anything mauve in nature that's not so cool like Veloria found in Divine Rose 1. I prefer a slightly rosier mauve tone on my skin. And this for me is so lovely to wear during the day if you insist on applying a smoky eye, as I know deeper browns closer to the black eyeshadows could be really intense for a smoky eye during the day. You could do what you want, okay? I just like this hue. It's very user-friendly and also not necessarily has to be applied in this manner. You can just apply a little bit on the outer V if you wanted to go in with one of the metallic shades first, or you can use this to create a nice smoky lash line with the smaller brush to add a little bit more intensity there with that shade. I think it's so pretty. Let's now go in with After Dusk. This is from Voyeuristic Vixen. I'm gonna wipe my brush to make sure I don't mix colors. But just from the swatch alone, this has a slightly more warm hue, but you know what? It could end up looking... I was going to say it might end up looking similar when applied on the eyes. I think this definitely leans a little more reddish. This is a little more neutral. This a little more red. Alright, here we have After Dusk. Here we have Mink Dusk. Ultimately, they are similar. Now, I am splitting hairs and saying this is more neutral mauve. This is more of a reddish mauve. But at a quick glance, I don't think you can detect that. I think the undertones start to come to the surface when you apply their respective metallics. So I'll go in with Sienna Rose, as I think this shade is absolutely gorgeous. You have it either, well, I was going to say Eleganza in Divine Rose 2, but I think even that is a little more purple. Just carving out a little bit here to make it appear a little neater. And then with Cyber Bronze, I'm placing that on the majority of the inner lid, not so much the inner corner, as I want to reserve that space for the lighter champagne shade. That said, we'll go in with Lunar Legend and place that on the inner corner. You know, I changed my mind. I was gonna keep this eye on. I think I want to take it off too and just create a whole other look using Mink Dusk as like a liner. You know what I mean? Now with Twilight Bronze, I'm gonna place it here on the lid in the same manner. Going in with my little Kolinsky brush. I believe this is a Hokoro brush. Carving out under the crease so it could appear neater. And then with Moonlight Liaison, placing that on the inner part of the eye. Definitely cooler than Lunar Legend. Lunar Legend has it's just more yellow, I believe. And just taking a little bit of Rosefire Nectar, but before that, because I almost forgot again, taking my Intensifies, gliding over Twilight Bronze to create more stick, then pressing my finger against Rosefire Nectars, just so you can see and detect how chunkier it is. But having Intensifies on there first just helps it adhere a lot better. Turning on my Glam Core so you can see a little bit of that shiny shine. So this, I feel, is the standout difference between the two. Voyeuristic Vixen, you have Rosefire Nectar. It's going to bump up the shade tenfold, as opposed to Bronze Borealis. You only have the metallics. They're shiny, very easy to work with, but they do not have the same impact and dazzle as the Nectar shade. All right, I'm going to finish up the lower lash line here. After Dusk on this side, and let's do Twilight Bronze on the lower lash line as well. Then Mink Dusk here on the left, with Cyber Bronze here on the rest of the lower lash line. We'll apply some lashes and the rest of my face, and I'll be right back. Here's a wide shot of both looks comparing Bronze Borealis and Voyeuristic Vixen. I really love the result from both palettes, but you can immediately see they have similar feels, right? They're both rosy, they're both mauve in tone. Because of Rosefire Nectar and the fact that you have that extra shine from Voyeuristic Vixen, I do prefer that one, but I could understand if you're not crazy about the more flaky texture and you rather just have a metallic that looks so beautifully subdued and elegant. Sienna Rose itself is not too red, not too cool. I think it's the perfect balance between both undertones and can be used solo. You don't have to use Mink Dusk as I did through the crease initially. You can just use Sienna Rose and blend out the edges and have a beautifully dusty, rosy, smoky eye. You can even pair this with Retro, Natasha's latest release. I think that'll be really pretty. With all that to say, let's take this off and I'll be right back. Now with Eternal Eden, I first want to use Earthly Delight. This is beautifully mauve, more so than what's found in Mink Dusk from Bronze Borealis. I get a kick out of the shade because although I said I prefer Mink Dusk over Veloria from Divine Rose 1, when this first came out, I preferred this first over Veloria because Veloria is very cool leaning and it could be a little ashy. Could. But the mauve undertone, I feel, lends a softer hue and blend that's just so pretty. And then with Temptation, I like to overlap that shade a little bit. So if you wanted to make it more pink, you could, or if you wanted to just make it exclusively more mauve, you could do that too. And a little bit of Earthly Delight here on the lower lash line. Ooh, I think I was a little too careless with that application. Now with Forbidden Fruit, which is just a lovely, ooh, it's so pretty. It's a more of a, let me see here. I want to say plum, but definitely more purple plum. And now, of course, Pink Mystique on the inner part of the eye. This has a champagne to pink flip. So pretty. Can be used on the inner corner or even as a highlighter shade. Forbidden Fruit now here on the lower lash line. So this definitely is softer than I think what we've seen from our first demo. Both Mink Dusk and After Dusk have just a richer tone to them. This is a lot more mauve-y, a little softer in hue. Overall, the palette depth is not quite the same that you would get from the previous two palettes. But what I want to do now is going back into Bronze Borealis, since we primarily use Sienna Rose on the majority of the lid, I thought, why not we start off with Cyber Bronze here on the lid. Definitely should just use my finger. I love that brush, but find it more helpful once I get the majority of the color on the lid. Otherwise, I'll just be here all day. You know, we're just talking about efficiency here. Lunar Legend again on the inner corner. And you know what I want to do now? I want to use Sienna Rose as like our smoky moment. So I'm taking my reference number 14, and be careful because although Sienna is very smooth, it's still a metallic and will have significantly more fallout than its matte counterpart when blending out. Just taking my time here. I want a little more smoke here or a little more color through the crease, but because Sienna Rose is so smooth, you can use it through the crease and it's going to have beautiful shine. Pulling Sienna Rose here onto the lower lash line. And now let's try Mink Dusk on the lash line. I'm not sure how it will translate here because I think you can identify more depth when applying it exclusively as your matte shade through the crease. You can build up the intensity, whereas if you place it on top of the metallic shades, I'm not sure how much contrast that would create. You could see a little bit for sure, but I think you probably won't need it at this moment since we use Sienna Rose mostly through the crease. You can pat down a little bit of Mink Dusk around the outer corner just to get a little more color there. It kind of shows. You can see that contrast, but overall, if you wanted to show more full body, then I would just apply it solo through the crease. I had on Velvet Muse and a little bit of Velvet Fawn on before. Now I want to do just Velvet Fawn solo. And here's the final demo showing Bronze Borealis with Eternal Eden. These, I think, are distinctly different. So although I realize that Earthly Delight from Eternal Eden, once looking at it, you immediately think of Mink Dusk or vice versa, I actually prefer now Bronze Borealis over Eternal Eden. I love pink, I love mauve. I feel this because of the more vibrant pink shade, depending on where you want to place it in your eye look will determine how vibrant it actually does show itself. You don't have to use it, but the flip side, however, you can use it as a blush, which I did in my original video. I used this shade higher on the cheekbones just so, oh my gosh, I keep forgetting that this picks up quite a lot of product, my goodness. And also the product itself is very full-bodied, as you see. So you could place it higher here on the cheekbones, and if you want it a little more pink to show up on your highlight, you can then go in with Pink Mystique and tap that right on the center or even bring it lower. So that's definitely going to steer the overall look. Like for me, I rather add the shadow as a blush to fully commit to the look. You don't have to do that. That is totally not mandatory, but I love playing with shadows on the cheeks because I think it's a great opportunity to do something else with your look, use the shadows in a different manner. I love the blush enveloping, if you will, the draping over the eyes, almost as if the pink is extending from the eyes onto the temples and onto the cheekbones. I think it marries very well. Whereas Bronze Borealis, a lot more subdued, very chill. Sienna Rose, I love how we use that instead of Mink Dusk through the crease this time. It's not as smoky, but I think just a beautiful color to have through your crease in addition to Cyber Bronze on the lid, because Cyber Bronze also has lovely shine, a really nice tone. It's more of a copper yellowish bronze versus the one that we saw from Voyeuristic Vixen, Twilight Bronze, a little more cool tone, a little more taupey in nature. So I do love both. I just prefer the more rosier tone versus the medium pink. Again, I would use them both, but I do believe if you already have Voyeuristic Vixen, then you technically don't need Bronze Borealis. You know, this is, I feel, really great to have because not only does the quad include metallic and matte, it also has this lovely topper astral shade that you can use on its own, you can use on the inner corner. right on the center of the lower lash line to create like that crying glitter effect. You can tap it on the lid like we did in our first demo, whereas Bronze Borealis is more chill. Definitely more chill, not as punchy as Deep Space Divinity. And if you don't have any Pat McGrath shadows at all and you don't have the 18 pan palette, then sure, I think Bronze Borealis will be a great addition to your makeup collection. It's neutral enough, but it has that mauve rose to make it a little more interesting. So that is it, fam. I hope this video helped in providing, again, some clarity in comparing these 3 luxe quads. Let me know what your favorites are down below. If you picked up Bronze Borealis, if you skipped on it, what are your favorites out of the 3? I will see you down in the comments. And until then, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I will see you in here again with another review tutorial, Luxe Quad Extravaganza, monthly favorites or vlog. Take care, and I will see you again soon.